Must one beautiful crow, an infinite dodge gentleman. We are here to potentially watch DFM 3-0 Sengoku Gaming, and it might not be close. Gentlemen, sometimes you have to call a spade a spade. And, this isn't looking good for Sengoku Gaming. I had a lot more copium and hopium before this series started, but, Crow, you wanted to talk about pick a bad phase? I'm gonna come straight to you to talk about that pick and ban phase. Yeah, go for it.
So, kind of threw us for a loop here, you know. We're talking about, okay, what can Sengoku do to actually bring back a game? We're like, okay, get Jet on a carry champion, get Jet on something I can make plays with, then run back the Ari. Awesome. And then I'm like, okay, let's want something with some agency. Okay, we're gonna give him Viego. Awesome. Oh, I didn't like Paz on Graves at all. Let's actually have him be able to do something. We're gonna give him Gnar. So I'm like, all right, yeah, so far so good, Sengoku. This is cool. And then we go to the bot lane. So we had talked about it a little bit on the pregame on the desk before game one about how Honey versus Udapon was just such a very bad matchup on paper because it's a little like, okay, cool, two really good 80 carries, yeah, awesome. But we didn't really bring up the fact that
I mean, arguably the region's top 280 carries.
Right. And we didn't bring up the fact that Honey on 80 carries this season has not really looked great on anything that wasn't the Jinx pick.
The Jinx Aphelios.
Or the Aphelios. And so,
hyper carries.
Right, exactly. Hyper carries. Who would have thought? 200 years or.
Right? That's a hyper carry.
Yeah, like 200 years or the best cosplay girl, you know? It's whichever you want to do. And unfortunately, this composition was not the one for the Jinx. And they didn't pick the Aphelios. So they're like, let's try the Xayah, you know? Give them some tools to work with on Escape. And DFM literally just said, hey, mate, watch the Zilean real quick. And I have discovered through this matchup that Zilean into Renata is such a great counter because teams cannot pick blindly this Renata at all. Very good into melee counters, I will agree. Yeah, cool. But can do well against enchanters.
What do you want to see from Sengoku then?
I would love to get Inti on, get him on the Leona if possible, if it can make it through ban. Get him on the Leona, get him on the Rel maybe as well. Just don't go back to the Nautilus. It wasn't really working synergistically with the composition they were picking.
Get him on tanks.
Get him on tanks, right. Get him on tanks second. I predicted the 3-0, 100%, but I would love to see Sengoku actually get some sort of fighting chance and not just, roll over.
Okay, Dodge, I'm coming to you now. You're saying copium. You're screaming the copium at the tank engaged supports, the Alistairs of the world, even Thresh to a degree. Why are you screaming copium? What do you think DFM have got planned?
I mean, I'll keep it very brief. You could give him not just engaged tanks, you could give him peeling tanks, which is his bread and butter. You could give Enti the Tom Kench at this point. It's not going to make the difference. DFM has Sengoku's number. It breaks my heart to say, but I think we are ready to throw it over, so I will leave it as simple as that. It's copium to think Sengoku has a chance in Game 3. Make me eat my words, Sengoku.
I'm going to say Malphite's going to get picked for Paz, and they're going to go Wombo Combo Nation. That's my expectation, but Nightmare and Initialize, gentlemen, please. Take it away.
Lexi said something very wise. He's quite a wise man, really. And he said, of course, someone's going to call a spade a spade. Well, I'm going to call that spade a shovel, namely Yorick's shovel, because they are currently 2 feet wide and 6 feet deep, it feels like, in this series. Our Sengoku Gaming, they are 1 foot in the grave. DFM have been handily digging for them so far. We're into Game 3. We've got some bans. DFM back on blue side. Unfortunately, Sengoku have got to ban the Tryndamere. They've got to ban the Caitlyn, and I suspect we know what the last ban will be.
I wonder if it should be the Hecarim at this point, actually. That's the problem. There are so many things you've got to ban, but remember, DFM first picked the Karma in Game 1. They knew what they wanted at their blue side priority, picked him towards the Ezreal Karma, and bot lane really struggled after that point. So, Sengoku, they've seen the Ezreal Karma, they have seen the Misfortune. What can you do to solidify your bot side now? With the Karma gone, can you pick something that can fight early into Enchanters, into stuff like Zilean, like the Nautilus? Can you go for something like Nautilus Aphelios and think you're safe into the Misfortune? And if that's the case, do DFM have another bot lane answer? Because that's been a big part of this series.
So Nautilus, again, it's not the Leona, but it's a similar kind of vein. It's engage, it's go buttons, and they've gone towards Once's Lee Sin. It has been his most picked, his most successful champion. 8 games on it so far this split. This will be the 9th. And honestly, the Volibear bit ineffectual. The Viego got caught out, couldn't get to play that reset combo of the Ari Viego to its full extent, and it's a decent shift. They're gonna think about the misfortune again, but at least this time with the Lee Sin, you have got some ways to arguably punish that.
Yeah, you can disrupt that. Again, you can play towards 3v3 bot side with Nautilus's setup, Lee Sin's early power. Doesn't matter what AD carry you've got, there's a chance that you can start removing Misfortune's early impact on the map, because Hecarim can't do the same things at the same levels that Lee Sin can. The question is, of course, what's going to come in for DFM as a support? Can that, again, kind of bolster up DFM on that bot side in that regard? And this would be a bit of an easier answer to that. Now, it's not going to be as passively aggressive as a Zillion, as opposed to...
So just me and you when we're irritated at each
That's
other.
the one, yeah. But this is a very different... Look, now, it's not a Braum to block out the bullet time. It's going to be Samira's Blade Whirl, the spin wall, to stop those bullets raining quite so true. And I actually wonder at this point whether you've already forced the Misfortune into a crit build, because your ult is going to have less value.
Well, the draft don't lie, Samira, and other very bad
The crits don't lie.
The crits don't lie. That's probably better, actually. I'll take that one. Thank you. Steal that one for in-game. No one heard that here. It's mine. Yes, I will, shamelessly steal that from my brother. It's what I do. Camille banned away right now, and I understand that suggests potentially something like an Ornn or a Malphite, which Lexi was calling for in the pre-game there. And I wouldn't hate that as a shift.
And it would be more of a Paz special, right? You know, we talked a lot about this in game one, because again, there's so much history in this matchup, and again, we'll get around the picks and bans on a more analytical side a bit later on, but because there's a lot of people who tune in who won't necessarily know the ins and outs of our history. Paz has always been the kind of the more cerebral veteran top laner. He's not going to be the person to mechanically out-trade you in every different time. That's more Ebby's side of the coin. On the other side of it, it's Paz playing more engaged champions, playing more team fight oriented, and being a leader for the team in the big grouped up fights. That's what he did in 2020 on V3, and he did it on things like the Ornn, on stuff like the Scion, and banning away stuff like the Aatrox and the Camille. That would go towards that calling card too. I would, again, really echo what Lexi said. I think he's got a really good read on that. Get Paz on something that can be more of a team fight engage leader in the 5v5.
So the Nars out is something that's a bit more comfortable. A Gragas would be in a very similar vein.
No, I don't mind that.
We've seen Gragas played very well as a disrupting, stop the top laner being able to pick whatever they like and just split pushing away, and that was a bit of a problem. It's a little bit more disruption. You can affect the Misfortune again, as can honestly every other one of these champions, and that's not a bad call. I think we've seen Ray Farkey, for example, over for Burning Core, do exceptional things on the Gragas. Actually, now we've got to see what the answers are. Yaharong's Victor was a staple early on in the split. It's another big team fight moment. I could see that being locked in here. Could also be a flex.
This is another real hallmark of this version of DFM. Lots of flexibility. Now, we saw that a bit last year as well, with Ari going on to pretty much whatever they wanted him to, whether that was Seraphine or Silas or LeBlanc or something a little bit different. Yaharong has done similar for this team. He's played the LeBlanc, he's played the Veigar, he's played the Victor in this case. They can play towards the outrange, play towards Leona Solar Flare, dumping ults on top of the single carry. And guess what? Samira cannot dive as easily into that Victor. Now, what this Renekton does is allows DFM to have a very strong early spike around the Herald. You get level 6s on your main carries, Renekton spikes around then, but DFM now have the onus on making sure that early game top side goes well, because Renekton falls off fast and it falls off really, really hard.
It does. Of course, you're not the same Sterak's beast you used to be at 2 items. You're not awful. You're just not that great. You're kind of you're a mediocre thing at a lot of points. You do at least provide some point-and-click CC against the likes of Samira.
That's huge.
Which is actually really important, because that way you can't block it.
And the other thing, and that's the thing, right? It's a point-and-click melee attack. It's not a projectile. That Blade Wall is not going to help much with that. So as much as I like the Samira in the 2v2, I think that when you get towards the 5v5s, having a Victor whose Q-empowered auto attack can't be stopped, the ultimate that can't be stopped, a Hecarim that can't be stopped, and then also having the Renekton on top of that, Honey is going to really struggle when it gets to group fights unless he chooses this angle very well.
Fortunately for him, he doesn't have to be the first one in. He's got Lee Sin, he's got Nautilus, he's got a Vex. around there to set things up for him. He can follow up super well. And remember, of course, Samira's passive is often a bit that people overlook with that
move
kind of
speed when you stack up,
and it's
yeah.
also the immobilized thing where you knock people up. If someone's immobilized, you get to jump to them and get those auto attacks from the max range.
So
and get those
actually,
slight
it is
knockups.
only on other knockups now. However, that does the thing is that what it does do is things like it doesn't juggle them effectively in terms of keeping them airborne unless they're already airborne. Nautilus Hook does that. Yeah. But you can still get another stack of your. You can still get another stack of your passive on other CCs. So even if there is another immobilize, you get another stack of your passive because it technically counts as a separate instance of damage compared to like a basic auto attack or a Q or blah blah blah. So with Nautilus at level 1, you do get 2 chances to get that. Lots of move speed, lots of chance to chase people down. However, that's great for the 2v2. As we said, let's check how it goes later into the game. Honey has not typically picked up this champion. Remember, he only started in the spring 2020. He's not as tenured as someone like Youthpon. Starting to get some real games under his belt, but only 2 on Samira. 1 a win, 1 a loss.
All right, well, Samira's always been a champion where, outside of when she was utterly broken,
2020, baby.
that requires certain comps, certain setups to make her work because of how aggressively you have to play her, how deep you have to dive for her. But when you do get the options, you are the Katarina of AD carries, where you have multi-kills written in giant glowing Las Vegas-style neon letters above your head, namely the letter S, specifically what it is.
It's the SSS super sexy style.
Exactly. I am very ready for heavy metal and references to Dante and Nero coming out. The Devil May Cry, but DFM might as well. We'll find out whether Honey can make that happen. I think the cleanse here, very smart as well. It does mean that NT with the Ignite, though, means there's no heal or anything to keep that player alive. Udapon has gone towards the heal himself this time, not a cleanse. So that will be the slight discrepancy there.
So,
anything else you really want to pick out here from the summoners or anything feeling pretty normal aside from that?
You know, and again, when it comes to Sengoku, we talk about 2 players in particular. Again, that bot lane, Honey, needs to have a big performance on this champion. He has had huge, monstrous performances before. Actually, I've just been checking up some of his career stats. His highest DPM game of all time was a game versus V3 when he was still on Axis, where he had 1,581 damage. 1,581 damage at DPM. That is absolutely
top list of AD carry.
That is getting towards some of the greatest DPM counts of all time. But the other person is Jet. Now, Jet, early on in the laning phase, has been doing better, but as you can see, starting to take the worst end of this trade. Either way, Yarong versus Jet, this is the matchup which has been closest so far. And I think both of these laners, both mid laners that have come in the wake of Arya leaving, who took this region by storm. Yes, had a weaker split this time on KT Rolster over in the LCK, but that does not diminish his body of work he had in the LGL. These two have really been, again, we said this in terms of DFM as a team, but these two have been changing what it means to be an LGL mid laner and how good it can be in this region.
And you can see some of the discrepancies here. Like Yarong, generally in the early game, is asked to play for lane, cover the team fighter later, and he does pretty well. He gets great amounts of gold, does lots of damage like this. He is capable of basically playing by himself and being self-sufficient. And speaking of being self-sufficient, Steel doesn't quite get the devastating charge. Slight spectator bug there with the bufferings going on, but Jet has to flash out of that lane. It's a ghost for flash trade. And on the opposite side for someone like Jet, we'll talk about this later. Flash away from Unipon. Want is coming down, but they're going to know he's here. Ward hop forwards. Going to try and auto it out. One final auto still gets first blood for Unipon. Somehow, some way, Harp across the wave will make sure that it's not going to be a 2-for-1. And you just can't win.
And this is the thing with this draft from Sengoku. Again, we said it a couple of times earlier in game 1 and game 2. You can 3v3 or 3v2 in the bot side. This time it actually works out for Sengoku though. The first time we've seen that in this game. Honey doesn't get the kill, Utapon does, but it is going to be a preferential wave state for Sengoku with the cannon still alive for DFM, going to push in and kill a load of the red side minions. Utapon is going to lose out on a bit of that CS. All of this happening though, isolates top lane. It isolates the strong early lane from Renekton. DFM kind of getting the bad end of a trade in bot lane, better end in mid. What happens in the isolated top? Let's track that next.
Absolutely, and eyes on. Again, Jet here down that flash with another one of those carries. You saw the kill participation. He's been so key for Sengoku in terms of when they've been rolling, Jet's been involved. He's got the Vex. He can follow up with once. But this kind of play here, it needed to go a little better. It's a quick flash from Udapon, and then they just say, we're not getting out. We've got to go all in.
And you know, for the first 2 games, we've talked so much about
C9
Harp and
flare.
Utapon, but it's really worth noting again that, you know, Honey has been probably the MVP of the region across the entire year last year. Maybe Sol could be in the equation. Maybe one of the many DFM great performances could be up there too. But either way, Honey has a pedigree in this region. NT, consistently top 3 too. Very rare. He's only missed, I believe, the top 3 margin once in his career, and he's been around for a while too. Sengoku have their own veterans, and you can see why, again, that comes in so important in this game. They're down 2-0, crushing 2-0, but they have that mental fortitude to come back and say, all right, let's hit him hard in game 3 and let's hit him early. At least they've got something going in the early game. Much better than game 2 and 1 so far for the first couple of minutes.
Absolutely, and there are some summoner discrepancies in this bot side. Namely, Honey has both of his available compared to a big lack of them right now for DFM, but in trade, they did get the early Scuttle Crab that Steel picked up. They put down early wards to try and stave off any repeat ganks, which you know Once will be looking for. He's clearing towards this bot side again. It's expected maybe 2 minutes or so, maybe even shorter if you decide to skip stuff to make that happen.
I know in the last kind of little tirade I was going, a little bit around, I was like, wow, yeah, great bot laners from Sengoku to veterancy. Once on his Lee Sin is obviously in this equation too. Once his Lee Sin has been somewhat of a, it's been a boon and a bit of a negative for him as well at points where he's occasionally forced it into bad points. But once this split has had a huge revival. This is a guy that was on the awful roster of Burning Core last split, the one which couldn't get anything going. But leaving that team, going into new pastures, both teams have actually come out from.
Here we go.
Positive to that. And once again, speak of the devil, he'll come and 3v3 the spot side.
3v3. How deep do DFM go? They're going to get trade onto NT. They're just going to back out from here. They're going to get
There's
a
the
hook
hook.
onto Harp. Remember, he's down the summoner. He's going to try and turn this around. Honey won't get that much down. It's an ignite out of NT. I'm just going to back away from this one. Steel might face check once, but I don't know how much Once wants this. Still thinking about hopping forwards. It's just some face checking, some posturing.
Jet's
as you can
roaming.
see, Jet roaming. Will land the Sonic Wave, but he's going to ward hop back away with the safeguard.
There's the hook.
Does land the hook. That's a dead Udapon.
It's a dead Udapon, and even though the start of this play once misses the Q on the juggle target, doesn't matter, DFM, go for that 3v3, and you know, sometimes they have found themselves in this situation. They want to outplay, and now Jet has the ult.
We'll continue trying to get forwards. They're going to try and get the Q now as well. Flash forwards from Once will get him another kill. That's great news from Sengoku Gaming, their first early game lead all series long.
You cannot count this jungler out. Once 3-0 on the board, and DFM, for the first time, starting to fall behind the early game. Actually, again, and we're going to keep saying this, the LJL is not a region which plays through early aggression, but Once is one of the few players that really adds an asterisk to that and say, the LJL doesn't play through early game unless you got this guy on your roster.
Ebby does take the opportunity to invade and steal away the red buff, which is something will certainly make his lane into Paz a little bit nicer, but the roam from Jet, the 3v3 that DFM couldn't quite disengage from, really hurts them there. And now you've got a 3-0 Lee Sin. It's Once's Lee Sin to boot. And that is a scary prospect.
And remember, we put the onus onto DFM to play through their early game, play through that, or at least have an early game lead with the 2v2, and then Renekton. What's Renekton doing? He's forcing a flash, taking a good trade, but again, this Renekton will fall off at some point. Will be very important in those 5v5s. Let's look a little bit further at this point, because Sengoku have done the first part of the equation. They've gotten their AD carry into the game. That's something that they haven't done in the first couple of games. That's going to change the outlook of this one fairly heavily. What's going to happen when it gets towards those 5v5s though? What happens when Renekton is playing around their power spikes? Because for me, this team fight is going to be about, is Honey going to get point and click CC'd, and is Jet going to be able to survive as well?
He does have the flash and manages to get the devastating charge. Buffer is what we'll call that one. And he does get out, but it is the summoner down again. Reminder, summoners in bot lane now back up for the likes of Udapon, so a little harder to punish that. Remember, they still didn't get any plates because of the wave state, which is going to be a slight frustration, I'm sure, for Honey and crew. But they're going to take this opportunity now to maybe invade onto the Raptors, which Steel stole on the other side just prior to the mid lane gank, as Harp might now find himself in a bit of danger as well.
He's got himself a flash, but is level 6 on Once.
Now going to see how this one plays out. Here comes Steel, who's also got the onslaught of shadows. It is this posturing game, this statement of, this is my territory, no, this is mine, and that kind of war, tussle, contestion for control that right now is still being fought over. Once they will start up this dragon, Herald has spawned on the top side, but no one is currently moving over to try and take that one.
No, and I think that, Sengoku, they have the pushing lanes in mid and bot, and of course Renekton and resets. They have basically a choice to make. A play wherever they want to. They have the lanes in their control. DFM, not ready to really group up and look for the big fights so far. And I think if they did, I think they'd be in a bit of a disadvantage right now. Before you get towards Renekton really finding the big flanks and to get onto those key targets, it's really the Lee Sin and the Vex that are going to be running the show in terms of picking off someone, picking off the overextensions. So DFM, biding their time for now. And again, let's wait until that 5v5 comes through. Let's see what happens with Honey in these team fights. If Samira starts doing damage, I think DFM lose. I think if they get to shut them down early, Sengoku really struggle.
And the goal is back to closer to even. It was actually DFM favored a moment or two ago, but Sengoku back to about 100, 200 gold lead, if that, and that's largely off excellent wave management from DFM, who picked up just more CS around the board. And yes, the early kills there, they're in good spaces, but I need to see more of this acceleration, because if it stalls out again from now, especially now the summoners are back up for DFM, this gets harder. Here comes the fight for the Herald.
And again, this is where Renekton spikes. Herald fights are where you really start getting powered. Look at that Rage Bar. You're going to get multiple empowered abilities. Can Sengoku outplay this?
Trade for the massive bullet time. Big Casco turns around, but once been stunned in place, he's dead. It's a shutdown, still gets the onslaught of shadows, and it's a team fight wipe. They get them all! Full ace in Yoharong's Chaos Storm shreds them!
Quadra kill for the victor, and this is exactly, and I cannot stress this more, exactly to a T, to a minute, to a second, where DFM's comp comes online. Ebby comes in with multiple empowered abilities, and the Renekton making an absolute mess. A butcher's yard of this fight is the real story. We'd said it from the draft, we'd said it from everything else. Look, it's all well and good, Sengoku, that you want to play around this early game, but you gotta outlast Renekton's usefulness. Gets one huge chunk onto once, buys a lot of space for Yaharong, and then Ebby gets right into the thick of things. I cannot stress this enough. Do not fight into Renekton at Herald. This is what happens.
And that is the problem with the Samira in this game. Yes, she's fantastic if she free fires, but you are free firing into Dominus, Onslaught of Shadows, Chaos Storm, Gravity Field, Bullet Time. You can't Blade Whirl at all.
And this is something which I have to criticize from Sengoku for not knowing how these compositions interact. You can look at your own 5-man unit and say, what happens when I reach these items? You gotta do the same for the other team, because when Renekton as a champion we've played against for so many years at this point, and at this current iteration, Renekton spikes around the first Herald fight and then falls off heavily at that point. You just gave a boatload of gold to this competition, which didn't need to happen. You could have given up that Herald, play around some later spikes, and it feels like Sengoku have really thrown themselves into the ditch here.
At least now they've still got some summoners to play with. Yudapon, Yaharong, even Steel right now, of course, with only the Ghost, is down those summoners, and that means that potentially there's a punish window here available. NT's in this bush down here, maybe looking for exactly that. There'll be the Hex Flash looking to try and get onto Yudapon. It's a decent depth charge. Down comes once. Yudapon under the tower, trying to get forward.
Oh, the hook!
Forward. It's a great hook. They're going to get under the tower. Gets the kick, and now they're going to get back out again. Wild rushing away. Jet does miss the Shadow Surge. No, he doesn't! And he gets another. The punish is there. Finally, they get it.
Sick play from NC. Gets the hook, curves the anchor, and gets the play, but Jet's in trouble in mid.
He's got a flash. I don't think he's going to have enough. There's a Dominus. They're going to get the point and click the Ruthless Predator into that Herald play. There's the punish for the punish. Paz will come down. And where is Steel? Looking to trade out with ones potentially in the river. He'll be warded away. The Sonic Wave misses. 4 plates in mid for the temerity to go bottom dive.
That's a great word. And it's a great set of plays from both sides. I mean, Sengoku find themselves a window of opportunity, but DFM not without a response. Ebby on full on rage now. Can they actually look for a dive with an empowered W? I think they might be able to, you know.
Behind. They can definitely think about this. Takes a lot of damage to Paz. Remember, he's not built that much tankiness yet. Chaos Storm with a little flash. He's just done. 6 kills to Yaharong.
Look, there's a giant red bar under Renekton's health bar. When that's full,
stay away.
Fight the Croc. Don't do it. As much as I love Ebby, and I think he's a fantastic player, this is Sengoku not realizing the power spikes of this champion and the mechanics of it. How many years do you have to play against this champion to realize empowered abilities be strong?
It's so much damage, and he's done, and I'm so glad that in this game where we bring up the mid lane graphic, Yaharong does this kind of thing. Yes, you killed Yudapon a few times. He's doing okay. He's still doing just fine in the XP. He's got some kills to his name. He's keeping up in CS. You've dived him, but every time there's been a cost. That cost is in mid lane. It's mid lane tower that's nearly dead. It's top lane that's about to lose a 4th plate, but just about survives before that timer comes down. You might get a 2nd dragon, but I don't think it means Jackal right now.
No, I really don't think it does, because now you've got a real problem with this composition where, again, to revisit what we said before, what did we say? We said, okay, well, you need to get the AD carry relevant from Sengoku. Honey is the hyper carry of this region. Fantastic from ahead, fantastic at playing out team fights when he's given ability to do so. Can you do that into a 6-kill Victor? I don't think you can at this point. I don't think you can do that into a Renekton that's ahead of the curve.
Oh my lordy lord.
Look at the gold on those solo laners. And this is the difference between a team like, say, I mean, if we're looking at Paz, right, 2020 V3, who were a team we sent to Worlds with a bit of a lack on the individual mechanics, but they made up for it in terms of the rotations and their synergy as a team playing between jungle support. And the difference between that and DFM that we saw last year, when they just pull out all the stops on an individual level, and they're also pretty good at that whole skirmishing thing too. When you play against this kind of team, these solo laners will get these leads.
2,500 gold apiece ahead for Ebby and Yaharong. Utapon, by the by, despite dying 3 times, is up 30 gold over Honey, who they've tried to take out of this game. He's still doing just fine by all accounts. Harp, though, might now be in trouble, and this might be an opportunity to punish Blade. Well, they were trying to rotate mid, but Sengoku were just there a little too quickly.
Just a little too quickly. A little out of position, and Harp is someone that we have often praised as someone who just doesn't make that many mistakes. Very LCK style support, that's the way that his team really kind of referred to him. And of course he was in the LCK, came in this split, same as Yaharong, and they come in and they have revolutionized this team. DFM, again, looking to rebuild this year. It's been more than a rebuild. It's been building on strength after strength, and it's building on a tower right now.
This is going to be a 3v4, but Paz is already chunked out, does not have the ultimate. Knock up onto Steel, but he's pretty tanky.
Yaharong!
Is not the best. Yaharong's in trouble, but look at the other side. Misfortune is here as well. It's a 1-for-1 right now, but they're going to try and trade out to Paz. If Utapon can get closer, to flash over the barrel into the bullet time will secure the kill. I don't care how much damage reduction you've got from your W. It's a 1-for-2 in favor of DFM.
And Jet pulls out the ult at the end, maybe trying to get a little bit more damage, but at least they shut down the Victor. That's a big shutdown to get. I'm actually not sure who that kill went to.
If he went to once,
I mean...
Ooh, actually, maybe he went to Jet, I'm not sure.
I was about to say, there are a couple... I need to see who that really went to. We'll find that in this replay, because that extra lump of gold is going to be 1,000 shutdown. You got to imagine after that many kills were picked up. But this is DFM, again, trying to play around some of their power spikes, utilize the Renekton, getting that priority, and just shoving in across. And Yaharong doesn't have a flash, does a decent job of getting down at least a good amount of damage while he's falling through, but with that Q missing, it allows the extra laser to come out, allows that ultimate to come out, but
yeah, it was
kill goes to Jet. That's actually pretty big, all things said and done. DFM come ahead in terms of the amount of gold earned in the play, but the shutdown going to a key member of Jet, pretty important here.
Those mid laners, we highlighted them earlier. It's nice to see them being pretty critical right now. Of course, quick roam up from Utapon allows for that trade back, but you've got to see whether Sengoku can continue making plays like this. It hasn't gone quite as well as they would like, but even so, this is the closest game we've had all series long. Once is Lee Sin, now at 1.5 items, can maybe be a carry threat. They can get a hold of this bot lane tier 1. That's great news for them, as Jet is bush camping, but Harp is around to try and punish should the Vex decide to step forwards.
And, DFM, now we're going to move on to the next phase of this
game. There's going to be NT around. They're going to flash out, but they're going to have to pull back around. It's a fantastic turnaround. Chaos Storm is there, but he's got his flash out inside Jet. Just about to survive, but the Ignite!
Ooh!
Takes him down. Not quite enough. The level up, I think, just came through. He'll stay alive. Flash for flash. Harp uses his. Jet burns his in trade. It's a teleport from Paz as well, though.
Yes, and again, just DFM, even if they're not getting kills, we saw this a lot in the last game, just taking preferential trades, so Sengoku don't have any ability to make aggressive plays. Now, if Jet doesn't have ult, if he's not out on the map, if he's not able to push out waves and look for angles to actually fire the ult off and punish the over-aggression, then what do they do? What do they do at that point? You don't have the ability to really start a lot of these players because DFM are already pounding you down into the dirt.
Flash for flash, but then you also got Herald. You also get a steal on the Rebel. You get this bot lane tier 1, which Paz had managed to try and get a hold of that. Paz burned the teleport after getting the tier 1 himself down there. It's just the extra stuff. Yes, you stop the kills coming through, but it doesn't come for free. Ever.
Oh, and It does look like now, I mean, DFM in the driver's seat once more, 5,000 gold up with a hugely fed Victor, and who's going towards a Zonya's third as well. I mean, you're going to dive onto this champion who's going to dump down the, 3 abilities, press Zonya's, wait for your health bar to disappear, and then come out absolutely free in his own right.
Udapon, though, still doesn't have the flash course once without his as well, means there's not the easiest angle unless Paz can find the mother of all casts or a flash body slam. But now we've got Dragon coming up. This would be soul point for Sengoku Gaming, and I wonder whether they're going to just say, this is our time. Second Herald summoned in mid lane.
Okay.
Well, actually, towards bot lane, I apologize. That's where they'll throw it. And they're going to start roaming in. NT gets a hook, but I don't think that's the best
Renekton
target.
TPing.
Renekton is TPing into the onslaught of shadows. NT takes a solo Paz, flashing out, throws the cast, not the biggest moment. In goes the crocodile.
Oh my God!
Goes the Hecarim. The shadows onslaught forwards. They'll get another. NT will stop running his way away from the Leona. He'll throw a Zenith Blade in but a moment. Gets on top, trying to get the Shield of Daybreak. The autos from the minions will not be able to get through the Riptide and the shields. And they get the dragon, they get the kills, and DFM just cannot lose in a team fight.
And while it was super flashy looking at the Hecarim, oh my word, did Yahrong dump out damage at that point. Again, going back to what we said earlier, can Honey team fight? Okay, well, yes, if you get that early lead. Maybe not if you get this much damage onto this Victor. Let's see how this starts. A lot is about the front line, and Harp gets a lot of value out. Great amount of CC to buy time again and again. But look at this flash forward we're about to see. They use all of their disengage onto the Renekton, and they get 4-man ultimated by Yahrong. We saw that by Utapon on the Misfortune in game number 2. Or game number 2 on that Misfortune. This time, game 3, it's Yahrong picking up the slack. And this Victor, that was not fair.
And Udapon has stopped off going towards an Eclipse to get at that Cyrilda's grudge. Even the armor they've tried to build up, I don't think it's going to matter that much. You can see Hecarim and Victor managed to do all the damage required. Everyone else, 7,000. That time, it's just everyone else doing the damage required.
And for the first, and need we remind you again, we will keep firing these narratives in. Of course, this qualifies you for the finals, but DFM have typically let their foot just slip off the accelerator in the Juggernaut match because they thought it was a done deal. They've actually lost 2 out of their 3 Juggernaut matches in their history, but they are really pushing the ante up and further away from the rest of the teams in the LJL. They are showing what it means to be, again, the best team in this region. And the bar is this high if you want to go international. The team that makes it to the finals has got to be so scared. Jet
He's in so much trouble. There'll be a Shadow Surge forward, but he got devastating charged away from Udapon. He just doesn't have the damage at this point. There's a fight in the mid lane at the same time. Zenith Blade lands onto Empty. He throws out a depth charge, but now he is underneath the storm. The eye of it is not the safe place when it comes to this particular variety of inclement weather. Paz gets knocked back, does have a cast, will not get a chance to use it. The rain comes down, and Udapon picks up his 4th of the game. And now they can shove in towards this mid lane. Who needs Baron? Who needs anything else? They'll just take the mid lane tier 2.
I'm genuinely very impressed by DFM finding fights in their power spikes. And again, this is something that we've seen in the meta with a lot of our LPL teams, particularly T1 in the LCK as well. They know how to play around their strengths. And when you play a champion like Renekton, you know you're falling off at some point. You don't have the Sterix power spike anymore. Who gives a rat's ass if you're going to play like this through your early game? Find huge, crushing fights at this point in the game. Could they do this at a higher level? Could they do this internationally?
Are you sure?
Yet to be decided, but...
Are you sure? They're going to take so much damage, he'll go back in on the Q, still not enough healing, and he just goes down. It's dead. Yeah, it's a bullet time as a 21-gun salute. He was already dead at that point.
Oh, it's just the opening salvo, and DFM playing this thing out with such style, and really this game has felt fairly clean. A couple of early 2v2s don't go their way, but again, they find their power spikes, and that is so impressive for this team again, who have occasionally not managed to play things out as clean as we'd like them to. This series, this split for DFM has been incredibly impressive.
And for once, you decide, screw it. We're going to take Udapon out of this game. We're going to run everyone down bot multiple
Let's get Honey
times.
on the board, baby.
Look what it's done to mid lane. Look what it's done to top lane. And that is the problem. You put your attention somewhere, and DFM can generally weather it pretty well. And on the other side of the map, their other lanes go, thank you for the free reign. And this is the terror of this team right now. Steel will head on forward to throw on the Aura of Dread, and the topside Jet is being jumped on by Ebby, who throws down a Ruthless Predator. Doom and Gloom will come out and fear him away briefly, but now it is literally this tier 2 top side and a tier 2 bot side that stand between DFM and the base.
For me, this has been the tale of the series. What we saw in that last minute where Ebby is just going in and chunking someone out to half HP. Doesn't matter if he has to commit something for it. It just means that Sengoku don't have the HP bars, don't have the cooldowns to make the big plays. What can they do now? They're under their tier 2. They are struggling to find options.
In goes once, gets a kick back onto Unipon. Not sure that's necessarily what you want. Shadow Search will come through. Will Jet follow up? Big cask in the end.
Unipon!
That's a big shutdown. Unipon is gone. Yaharong's finally here, but it's a bit late. The Chaos Storm will not quite clean at once, and they found it. That was the kill they needed. Honey, in this split up fight, can keep hunting. Paz over the wall, can maybe look for more. They get a triple kill onto the Samira. I thought the kick was a bit awful. Unfortunately for Unipon, the flank from Paz deletes him with the help of Honey.
Honestly, most of that was actually Jet's ultimate landing onto that misfortune, because all well and good, getting that kick, it's like, okay, it's not actually into the right place. But watch what happens when Jet connects with that ultimate, because that's what really starts messing things up. Look at this. That's one. Get a decent amount of damage, and it splits up the front line. This is the key moment, though. Boom. Tags it onto that AD carry. Cask, ult from so many people, and that allows Honey finally a chance to really start fighting. All of this happens with Victor not there. They still lose a couple of kills, but that's the first good fight they've had almost in this entire series.
It feels like the problem is now the flashes are back up, and I don't think it earned them a Baron. It didn't earn them a Dragon. It's well and good getting these fights, but if you don't get the objectives afterwards, it's a problem. Jet's ultimate now back off cooldown, but he's got to deal with this Renekton who's on his face. He's going to try and get away with the blast cone. Doesn't have to burn anything more.
Not just yet. And Ebby now has to be this mid-game to late-game Renekton, who's going to struggle to have as much value. A lot of this is going to have to come down to Yaharong. What's going to happen with him? We talked about Honey and his importance to Sengoku, but the thing is, the main person who's taking him off the board is going to be the huge Chaos Storms coming through. Watch Yaharong, see how much damage he gets out in these fights.
It's been a couple feel-good moments for Sengoku, but feel-good does not win you games. It does not win you objectives. This could be it. You lose this fight, you end up away from that soul point. There's Baron on the table. There's
Hex
inhibitors
Flash.
available. There's a Hex Flash forward for Honey to get a solar flare. Doesn't stun anybody up, but he does force people away. Blade Well now down. Paz chunked out. Enti chunked out. It's a decent turnaround from Jet, who gets a 4-man fear. That'll be a shutdown on the steel. Can Honey keep Honey? He's going to the back line, but the Blade Well is still down. He's dead. Utapon gets those one. Look at Ebby. He's still full HP. Once gets a heal. He's going to try and heal as much as he can. It's a Mistral Bolt alone. A triple for the Crocodile. Renekton will not be able to secure anything more. It is a 3 for 4, but DFM stands strong.
Dude, but you can see what happens when you get past a certain point in this game. DFM can't always find these wipeout fights because their front line doesn't scale massively well. If you don't get everything working at the right point, you're going front to back without a flank, sometimes one of these carries will slip through the cracks. This time it's actually still going a little too deep. NT Jet finding a lot of time to buy space. Paz also in the equation. Casks away some of that backline, and Honey has stacked up his passive at this point. Gets to get the reset on the Wild Rush, the extra mobility. Very, very strong. But again, we talk about how hard it is to team fight into this Victor. Dives in, looking for that moment, and doesn't quite find it. Yaharong takes him off the table.
And once desperately tries, because at this point it was a 1 kill and that was it. You got once managed to pick up a couple with a key use of his ward hop with his Q, but it's feeling a little bit desperate in some ways. They're getting some stuff, but it's not quite enough. And when you're burning Bladewell early, going in afterwards is so difficult unless you can find more of those split up fights, a little bit like you find around that top tier 2.
Yeah, you say that, but I mean, it doesn't even need to be a split-up fight, quote-unquote. For me, it just has to be DFM's front line getting wailed on by Honey while he has a chance to stack his passive. Maybe you can get to a point where you can find a gap in Victor's rotation of spells where you can jump onto him. You have an Infinity Edge. You have 3 items on your AD carry, and as it so often has for Honey's teams, he is the focal point. Again, we called it out earlier in the game, but all the gold is on him now. It just makes it that more important.
3 items.
Yeah, just called that out.
Yeah, exactly. You've got the Collector. You've got a stopwatch. Got a stopwatch on Jed as well. Can they make it happen? They've burnt a lot of summoners to make this happen. Once has his flash, maybe that's enough, and then goes Steel. They get that top tier 2 Enti chunked out. The gravity field comes down as well. Chaos Storm afterwards. So much damage. He's got no way out. He's dead. In goes Harp, but that's pretty damn deep. Solar Flare is down into the bullet time, but it doesn't really do as much as they'd like. Cask in trade to prevent it.
Okay, but that is now the Nautilus down. Your primary engage option, you don't have a cask. Is this now just Baron for DFM? You are against the Lee Sin. You need to force him out of the pit. Let's see if DFM find themselves a little over-aggressive onto Sengoku. Potentially, that's the option they have back into this.
It's a deep, dark jungle to start walking through. You don't have enough machetes quite yet. Ebby, Steel on the side, looking to go in with an onslaught of shadows. There it is. Fear back! Jet goes golden, and now Steel is in a little bit of bother, but he's going to be able to get out. Not quite. Does go down into 1-for-1. Mid laner for jungler, that means the smite is dead.
That means the smite's dead. And again, you see DFM, they understand that they didn't have enough to really cleanly get towards that Baron, but they are struggling to shut down Honey at this point. So Sengoku, they're down a hilarious amount of gold. The early game did not go their way, but you can see the roots in. Just a little bit of hope. It's not done yet.
It's not done quite yet. It was so close to that one being a bit of a whitewash. Fortunately, there was a stopwatch in inventory with Jet, and he immediately buys the Zhonya to take that off cooldown now that he is dead. That's going to continue to be a problem if you get caught out, if you can't control the vision. It's not the easiest face checks from Sengoku unless you want to burn things like the cask. At least you can burn the cask.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? I mean, actually, Sengoku's frontline doing a good job so far. Paz actually fairly tanky. What the difference maker is a lot of the time is, can Yaharong actually save enough cooldowns to threaten the backline as well? Because you can kill the first person on the front line. You saw what happened when NT is stuck in the fight. It's the Nautilus problem. You go in, you die if you're not running over the fight within the first couple of seconds. If you do manage to burn the Chaos Storm, though, maybe that opens up just enough ability for Honey and crew to start turning the fight around.
Force of Nature complete for Ebby. He's still up a hilarious amount of levels, which is, with that Death Dance, makes him a surprisingly okay frontliner, but that's the Muramana just completed for Misfortune. She's at 4 items. That's concerning. It's a 4th item in for Yaharong, and that means that, honestly, a solid ultimate from either of these members and people disappear. You got a Last Whisper just in for Honey, but there's no 4th item complete quite yet.
Quite well. As we said back in Champions Select, actually, when you see the Wind Wall equivalent on Samira's W coming in, maybe you're emboldened to go towards more of a crit build. It is still going to be that lethality, and it's a lot of items on that point now. But Utapon hasn't had the game-changing ultimates just yet.
4 stopwatches or invulns available for Sengoku down. Everyone but Paz has one available.
That's a whole lot of golden.
So they are basically saying, we need to win this next fight. They've got the tools for it. Of course, it's not like DFM don't have a few stopwatches of their own, but critically, none on Utapon, none on Ebby. And they need to be able to play this one out. The Baron is going to start his...
Jet's on vision. Ebby has empowered ability coming up very soon. He's actually running down in his rage.
Try and get onto Jet. There's a Dominus down. They're going to try and pinch this one out. Flash forward for that ultimate. The bullet time brings out Pass into the backline. Goes Jet, but can he get what he needs? He's alone. He's flashing away. Into the backline goes Ebby and Harp. Steel gets Jet. All the while Honey goes in, but he's not going to get enough down. He's dead. The Chaos Storm is there. And Utapon still alive. And DFM, even versus every stopwatch under the goddamn sun, get all the kills they need.
Oh, and it's the closest game of the 3, but I think it's staying at 3. No 4th to be seen. DFM finally get a winning fight in a margin that allows them to take down the base.
Sengoku put up a valiant effort. They managed to play onto some of the flash timers, but it's just not enough. There's 20 seconds on everybody that matters right now. Both Nexus turrets being sieged at once. Misfortune oscillating that passive between both turrets will secure an emphatic 3-0 for DFM. You've got to respawn, but once just falls down. It's done. It's dusted. It's 3-0. It's Detonation FocusMe going to the finals again.
I am seriously impressed with how DFM came into this Juggernaut match. Considering we have criticized them for being overconfident before, we criticized them for being misreading their win conditions in their comp. This game in particular, finding that Herald fight, rolling over the early game lead, and finding a way to close out this game within a reasonable time span, especially when they do fall off, was really impressive. This is a team now which, I mean, I said it quite early into the split, but remember this time last year, they were playing with Kazu coming in as support because they didn't have their residency checking out just quite yet. They hadn't got that for Steel, but at this point, we're now, I think at this point in the split, DFM are stronger at this point than they were last year. This is a team which looks coordinated. This is a team that looks scary. They look intelligent. And Sengoku, well, they found a way to adapt to maybe bring things closer in to give Honey a chance to play out those fights. That all-important carry for them was not enough to take down DFM in a single game in this series.
No, and we saw one good Samira fight. really, in that top side. We saw hints that maybe one could come through, but every time he goes in, it's into a 9-kill victor. Yaharong, this guy, this hidden carry for DFM, murders him in the last game.
He was not so hidden in that game.
Not indeed, and it is DFM that come away with a very commanding 3-0. Sengoku Gaming down to the lower bracket. They'll wait out the winner, either Burning Core or Rascal Jester. That, of course, yet to be decided. It does mean, for myself and Nightmare, we bid you adieu for the day and hand you back over to the cast. The analyst desk, not the casters. We're the casters. Throw it away.
Take it away from us.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people all around the world, depending on whatever time zone you are, because we are Mr. and Mrs. and people, actually. We are the people of the world wide, with our production, with our scene, with our region and everything. Gentlemen, history has been made. The first ever 3-0 in the Juggernaut matches ever since we moved over. So, I'm gonna come over to you, beautiful Crow. DFM, you predicted this. Well done, sir. Well done. 3-0. Dodge, you as well, sir. And Initialize, I believe, as well, also thought the 3-1. Congratulations on your prediction. Did you expect it to go like that, though, Crow?
After game 2, I 100% was like, yep, that is the 3-0 angle. I will admit, Sengoku did put up a lot better of a fight this game 3. Kind of scary there a few moments, but in the end, DFM reigned supreme with the 3-0, and thankfully helping on my sleep schedule.
Dodge, what about you?
Yeah, unfortunately, this is about more or less exactly how I expected it to go. I will say, you guys were with me while we were watching game number 3. I was maybe huffing some hopium at some points. I mean,
You did.
there was some pog there amongst the as Whippo would put it, but definitely more or less where my expectations lay going into this series beforehand, and I don't think I've ever been so disappointed to be exactly right about something.
Well, let's kick it off first and foremost with the pick and ban phase, because we saw the third game of a Hecarim there for Steel, a champion which I had called out in the very beginning, and then you both had echoed throughout this whole series. We didn't expect it to ever get played. Crow, I mean, this was 3 different Hecarim comps.
Yeah, 3 different times we got Hecarim out, 3 different matches of revenge for the Fallen Horses, as it was just insane. Steel is really good at League of Legends, and Hecarim was a really strong champion. It's just like, wow, that's just the flanks, the dives, the ability just to go in. And also, we got game 2 of Utapon on the MF. So, like, this combination is actually pretty potent, allowing Hecarim to dive in, soak up this cooldown, soak up that damage, and then you have MF on the outside, just like blick, blick, blam, blam, and just throw out the ultimate, and you're just like, you see the health bars just evaporate.
I'm talking about health bars evaporating. Someone had some triggers to pull Dodge.
Forgive me, I'm not a DMC fan. I suppose it was Samira who had devil triggers to pull.
What do you mean you're not a DMC fan?
I'm sorry,
We'll move
Crow.
over to that when we can't dwell.
I'm sorry, yes, but let me get on to the Samira. I thought it looked pretty good at points. There were a couple of times where I was pogging out a little bit. I thought, okay, they've actually found the angle here. They're into the back line with the Vex, and the Samira has the chance to free hit. But you look at all of the CC that Detonation FocusMe has for themselves. First of all, you have this massive AoE CC from the Hecarim. You have point and click from both the Leona and the Renekton, and it's just such an impossible comp for Samira to actually function in, that even when there were those brief windows of hope, these brief, bright spots in the darkness that was this series for Sengoku, ultimately it was just never going to be effective enough.
Kench, first ban every single match. Devil triggers felt good at points for the side of Sengoku Gaming, and they had more hope, I would argue, in this series than they've had in any of them. But I mean, saying something like that is like a pretty weird champ thing to say in the grand scale of things, because, oh yeah, a few things going well for you, but you still didn't convert it into a lead. And even if you look at this, there's a minute gold lead before this clip actually goes in Sengoku's direction. They had about there was 600 gold already in the pocket of DFM, and that was something that they've done throughout this whole series, is even when things were going maybe not flawlessly for them, pun intended with the player there, as we come into a jungle clip, but like they always felt ways of finding tempo to stop the tempo going in Sengoku's favor and then really bring it back in their direction.
Yeah, definitely. And like one thing I did want to highlight for Sengoku, like it was really dope that they were getting these small leads, these small skirmishes and whatnot, these little 3v2s and 3v3 wins. But unfortunately, a lot of that goal was going on to once, and once picking the Lee Sin this matchup really was just there to be a facilitator, get in some kicks, maybe just dart around and set things up. had that early gold gone to Honey, that might have been a different story for this early to mid game. And once again, DFM turned it around at a Herald fight. I don't know what it is about this series and them Heralds, but they did not spell good intentions for Sengoku. As you see here, just absolute domination. The Victor ult coming out from Yaharong, the ultimate coming out from Steel, just like spreading them apart and picking them off.
And Dodge,
Absolute insane.
And Dodge, this was something that we spoke about greatly, the three of us, when we were in the viewing party. Well, we had certainly someone, or otherwise known as Ari, one of our admins, with us. Shout out to them as well. We love what you do. The team fights from Detonation FocusMe were just on another level from Sengoku, even when Sengoku got the edge, really.
Yeah, it was a bit of a wondrous thing that every single game Detonation FocusMe was able to find these very easy to execute teamfight wombo compositions, and when you have the hand check and when you have the draft check, it leads to these situations where you meet up with Sengoku in the choke, you layer all of these big powerful abilities on top of them, and it's basically a vortex of death sucking away all of their hope in the series.
Yeah, the Victor from Yaharong I felt was particularly huge, and that's a player I'd love to highlight here because they've played 3 different champions in this series as Yaharong, and their adaptability, depending on the comp, has been very critical for how these team fights and how a lot of things have played out. Were they more zoning? Were they playing that Veigar and just trying to set up the boxes every time? It was vastly different, and even with the Ahri as well, it was pretty strong and solid, unless I'm getting the Ahri mistaken. I'm actually not sure about that one now.
LeBlanc.
It was 2 Ahri games for the side of Jet, if I am recalling
I knew there was an
correctly.
Ahri. I knew there was an Ahri.
I do believe it was LeBlanc for Yaharong in game 1.
Jet was on Ahri duty. It was LeBlanc, Veigar, and Victor for Yaharong in the series.
And I think that really speaks to, we came into the day talking about how Detonation FocusMe, right, they like to play on their side lanes. They're very flexible between Evi and Unipon as primary carries, and Jet's, Yaharong's flexibility sort of is the glue between those 2 side lanes. It holds the map together, and whereas Jet was a primary carry, all Yaharong had to do was stand up to him. But in this game 3, Yaharong got to say, no, this time I'm picking the big scaling teamfight champion, and I'm going to be the one absolutely ripping through you. It's my turn to assert my dominance, and that's what makes this Detonation FocusMe squad so scary. And it's like Nymera and Initialize were saying, they're so on point all across the map. They look maybe even scarier than they did at this point last year.
But the clip that we've currently got at the moment, it just showed. Well, no, that's fine. Past tense now. That we just showed really shows where you had some hopium and copium going for Sengoku. And honestly, I think that kind of this game 3, which was the toughest one for DFM to close out as effectively and cleanly as they had done. Game 1 was brutalization, just to watch from a Sengoku perspective. Game 2, a brief moment for the early game, but then it wasn't. Game 3, Sengoku fought harder than they ever had, and as you mentioned earlier, Crow, if maybe Honey had been the benefactor of some of those kills instead of getting the assist gold instead, maybe there's an opportunity. And I think if we look forward, remember, Sengoku are going to be playing the loser, or rather the winner of the match between Burning Core and Rascal Jester, and DFM will get to wait for the victor overall. I think it's more important now that we think a little bit in that direction for the side of Sengoku. There is hope, isn't there, Dodge?
Yeah, I would say so. Definitely more of an angle there in game 3 to look like they can contest with the big dogs coming from Sengoku. And, you know, we haven't touched on this yet, but something that was sort of giving us some hope that they would be able to keep up in the series going in was that they were the ones to hand Rascal Jester their only loss of that final round robin.
True.
So, you know, Sengoku shouldn't be slept on just because they didn't have the best of showings today, as we do see coming across one of these final fights. It was the right idea coming through from Sengoku at various points. They tried to get into the backline with the diving capability of Jet, find those multi-man fears to set up for their team fights. And I think it would have been more effective if they hadn't, accrued so many small disadvantages over the course of losing fights before. Their ideas at how to play the fights were correct at certain points, and I don't think they look hopeless at all after this game 3. It was a bit of a redemption tour. Definitely went better for them than it did for CGA, picking that Samira in game 3 of a one-sided series.
But they didn't pick up that one that I was expecting them to pick up. Sadly, Rat's just not that ready for it. But at the end of the day, Crow, we had to have an MVP. Dodge, we've all voted. We had some of the backroom staff as well assisting with that. And ultimately, well, there was some very good contenders on the side of DFM. Honestly, pretty much every member here has a good case for it. Steel on this Hecarim was just mind-controlling once in a lot of spots. Ebby, the solo kill against 5 members. That's Yaharong genuinely zoning and preventing Jet from popping off. Harp was honestly incredible on all of the different support champions. They got that karma, I remember, in game number 1. Literally felt like the whole game was dictated by Harp and where he was on the map. But it ended up going over to Utapon, who was our player of this series. And Crow, I'm coming to you first for this. What a pop-off from this man. Didn't die in the first 2 games.
Oh my god. The 9.0 KDA, that's just, didn't die first 2 games in the series. The man, the man was just so crazy. Like, I really did love his play, his positioning, his fearlessness, if anything. Like, it was just... His Ezreal play in game 1 was super clean. I loved how clean it was. He was staying on the outskirts of the fight, getting all those autos with the mystic shots in as well, just weaving in and out. Super dope play by him. But when he switched on in the Misfortune, this man turned into a different type of killer. This man was like, hey, don't forget, I'm still one of the best vets in the game, and decided to pump out damage numbers. Like, you were looking at some of the graphs, like, during game 2 and game 3, he was up there with the mids, you know? Like, Victor, Yaharong on Victor in game 3 definitely had the larger damage scales and whatnot, but Utapon was right there with them, cranking out the numbers. That lethality Misfortune, that is so dangerous. He 2-shot Jet on that Ahri. We remember the clip. Just pop it out of the bush, just pop, and that was it. And you're just like, he can't keep getting away with it. And he did all series.
He absolutely did. I mean, Dodge, the flash over the wall in game number 2.
I mean, he's just got the killer instinct, and it's a whole new level, along with his teammate Evie in the top lane. They've just both found this sort of new identity as, like, super dominant, and it goes back to what Crow said about game 1, right? It's Harp and Utapon in the level 2 skirmish, finding the 2v2 wipe, completely taking away the bot lane of Enti and Honey, and it's just been pretty spectacular to see coming out from Utapon, the aggression, tempered as well with the capability to still maintain these super high KDAs and not die at all. You know, not being felled once in either of these first 2 games. And that matches right alongside the regular season, where I do believe it was Utapon posting like an 11 KDA on the course of the season, as we do see that clip here once again. It's the flash over the wall to find the perfect bullet time lineup. And I will say, DFM did very much in all 3 games draft to the strength of Utapon to find these big teamfight pop-off moments, but that's what it means to be such a good player in that AD carry role. It's to be reliable, and it's to always be there when your team needs you, and nobody exemplifies that like Utapon did in this series today.
No one does. There's no one quite like him. He is the player that has gone to the highest ranks in almost every single game he's considered playing competitively. Remember, this is the player that was considering going Valorant while also being a pro League of Legends player and probably trying to juggle the both. There's no one more worthy, but we'll have to see who will get player of the series in the finals, because I'm sure all of the DFM members are hungry, eager for that one. More prizes to add to their trophy cabinets, but gentlemen, that is going to end our broadcast today. Detonation FocusMe win out with a 3-0. I want to thank Mr. Chris Edgeworth over our production overlord and graphical expert in many, many more things. Over to Initialize and Imera. Thank you, gentlemen, for doing your casting. As always, mate. As always, gents. And obviously, Crow, Dodge, thank you so much for joining me here. It's been fantastic to have you both here, but from myself, the LJL, you and everybody that's helped us out, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you all very, very soon.